What you are about to hear is an excerpt from a court hearing at the East Hampshire District Court, in which Cara and Annamarie Rintala are filing restraining orders against one another.
It's a long story, but up until October, it's only been verbal. And she constantly threatens me that she's going to take away my job, my livelihood, my daughter, and she's constantly threatening me.
I'm not going to play games with this. I'll have BCF come in here, and I'll indicate to them that I don't think either one of you is stable enough to deal with that child. That's how close I am to going off this bench and picking up the phone right now. Is that what you want?
That same day, Cara dialed 911, fearful of what Annamarie might do with their daughter, Brianna.
What happens if I call and halfway she's there and then she passes up, tries to hurt Brianna on my arm too. I don't want to say, we're going there. Okay, but that's okay. I'm not going to go with how it is. She's the one who could be arrested. We didn't need to go mention everything. It's okay. I need help.
It is easy to hear the dismay in Cara's voice and feel empathy for her during these audio clips. In psychology, the connection between a mother and daughter is known to far exceed any other paternal bond, so the fear that Cara may be experiencing in these moments is unparalleled. However, in this case, Cara Rintala is not the victim. Over the course of this video's 45-minute running time, we will showcase the lengths that a solicitous mother will go to when she feels that her livelihood, home, and child are threatened. The case of Cara Rintala has been ongoing for over 13 years, so in order to provide the essential context needed to fully understand this case, we must now start at the beginning. Annamarie Cochrane grew up in the city of Northampton, Massachusetts, in a large Italian-Irish family. Her family knew her as a sweet girl who loved animals, especially dogs, and as a child, she had a Shih Tzu named Snuggles and a poodle named Charlie. Throughout her teen years, she loved to make people happy and enjoyed the attention when going out of her way to make people laugh. She was the embodiment of the motto seen plastered on decorations all over every home decor store: live, laugh, love, a motto that she made her own. Naturally, it was her dream to become a veterinarian, but moving into adolescence and early adulthood, she found her passion for helping others and decided to chase her new dream to become a paramedic. Annamarie pursued this career as a paramedic, and in 2002, she began a relationship with Cara Rintala, another paramedic that she met on the job. However, her family believed that they were an unusual match. While Annamarie was boisterous, outgoing, and sometimes impulsive, wearing her heart on her sleeve, Cara was reserved, quiet, and often more calculated and deliberate, one who takes her time to express herself. She was also 7 years older than Annamarie. Despite their differences, they fell deeper and deeper in love. And in 2005, Annamarie moved into Cara's residence in Granby. 2 years later, they welcomed their daughter Brianna into their lives, adopting her when she was just under a week old. They then traveled to Provincetown to get married. With 2 fulfilling careers, a commitment to each other in marriage, and a beautiful baby girl, things were better than ever for the Rintala family. Unfortunately, within months, their contrasting personalities began to clash, negatively affecting their marriage. Annamarie was an amateur photographer on the side and loved spoiling herself with new Canon gear. This expensive passion, combined with her impulsiveness, resulted in serious financial implications for her and her family. She quickly racked up tens of thousands of dollars in credit card debt. These financial stressors then opened the door to other topics of argument, and the state of their marriage rapidly declined, sometimes leading to physical violence. In September of 2008, Annamarie filed a restraining order against Cara, telling the police that Cara had punched her in the back of the head. Cara was arrested and charged with domestic assault and battery, but the charges were later dropped at Annamarie's request. While Cara and Annamarie continued with their struggling marriage, they each began to develop deeper friendships with the people within their social circles. Cara turned to Mike, and Annamarie turned to Mark. Although Mark had a wife and daughter, he and Annamarie formed a strong emotional bond, to the point that he helped her obtain a credit card to help fix her credit score. She promptly used this credit card to spend over $7,000. Regardless, there was no definitive proof that either relationship was anything more than platonic. On May 12, 2009, a 911 call was placed from the Rintala residence. Unintelligible screaming could be heard in the background, but nobody was responding to the dispatcher. That call was then ended from the Rintala's end of the phone line. When the police followed up on said call, both Cara and Annamarie explained that Brianna had inadvertently dialed 911. Strangely, it was later that same day that Cara filed for divorce. According to court documents, the reason for ending the marriage was an irretrievable breakdown. Just 2 weeks later, another distressful 911 call was made to Granby Police. It was Cara. She was deeply distraught, making it difficult to understand her. She pleaded with the dispatcher, convinced that Annamarie was going to take Brianna away from her.
Emergency. I want to come down and just get an officer. Cara Rintala. She's crazy tonight. I'll let you know that I want to come down and see my daughter. My spouse and I are physically, and she's threatening to take my daughter from me. You want us at the hospital? No, I'm very upset because my spouse and I are going through divorce proceedings. And she's so on my head with the fact that she'll do everything from me, she'll take my dog, she'll do this across you. Can you come down there? I feel like I'm walking to my eggshells, and I feel like I want to hurt them. I feel so... Are you alone right now? No, I just my daughter. I'm sorry, I'm not going to cry. Is she there now? She is, yeah. She's waiting on me, but she's always crying. I love you. I'm sorry? My world has been taken on. I've had times when you came up and be accepted on any of the words that you are, and that's okay. It's okay when you don't agree. I get from home. And I'm just begging you to call that. It's not an emergency. It's not an emergency. I'm very upset. We want to make sure that everything goes well. There's no physical progression by all means, It's more emotional. You gotta go either way, You go there, you gotta go. Okay, I don't want to. We're going there. Okay. But that's okay. Someone needs to be arrested. We just need to go in and everything. Everything's okay. I need help. I know. That's what we're going to go to you. Okay. Okay? All right. Okay, bye.
Shortly after this call, Cara and Annamarie visited the district court regarding requests that they submitted to obtain restraining orders against one another. Cara was overwhelmed with emotion yet again, saying that she was afraid of Annamarie, as Anna would constantly threaten to take away her livelihood, her home, and her daughter.
All right, and for the record, who is Cara Rintala?
I am.
And you are Annamarie Rintala? And is it my understanding that the two of you are married? And there is a child involved here, is that correct, Brianna?
Yes, we got her 6 weeks old. Cara and I had gotten into an altercation on the 12th, early morning of the 12th.
Listen to my question. This incident happened on the 12th. Why is it that it's 2 weeks later that we're now in court?
As Cara was served with divorce papers this morning by the sheriff, she went ballistic. Brianna and I left the home. Upon our return, which was around 1 o'clock, she started screaming and yelling, "You're not taking my house, you're not taking Brianna."
That's fine. You've answered the question. The Cara Rintala, what is the basis of you seeking a restraining order? Go right ahead.
Today I reached all that I can take, and I'm afraid. I'm afraid to be in my house because of what Ann's going to say, because I'm constantly threatened, verbally and bodily, as far as in my personal space, all the time. And I called the police department twice, and I had asked what to do about it. And today, if she's right, I mean, I filed 2 weeks ago, and I held it off, and then I told her.
You filed what 2 weeks ago?
I filed divorce 2 weeks ago.
You filed papers?
I did. It's a long story, but up until October, she said it's only been verbal. And she constantly threatens me that she's going to take away my job, my livelihood, my daughter, and she's constantly threatening me.
All right.
So I'm afraid. Yeah. I'm afraid. I want peace in the house. My family lives in Rhode Island. It's not. And I own the house. I pay the whole mortgage myself. I pay all the bills myself. And that's why I don't leave. And I asked family lives one time away. I said, is there any way you could just stay with your family for a little bit? Just because so we don't, there's no volatility in front of Brianna, and that's all. I'm just nervous. I don't know what to do.
Well,
I was just...
I'm sorry?
Just
Very briefly.
I was very upset because I wanted a divorce.
no, I filed first, and I'm sorry.
I would have taken off Cara's schedule, which is a fixed schedule, so when she has to work, I have to either take days off. I'm like the primary caregiver for Brianna. I'm always in the home. I cook, I clean, I do everything for Cara. She made $80,000 last year. I made $20,000 because I'm like a stay-at-home mom for Brianna.
All right.
The problem is she doesn't want me to have. I filed a divorce. She's very upset with me.
This is an issue that goes well beyond
Yes.
a simple restraining order. We can have criminal charges going back and forth against both of you, and the only one that's going to really affect in the long run is your daughter. I'm going to issue 2 restraining orders of no abuse.
Right.
No abuse. The 2 of you can either deal with this as adults and deal with it in the probate court as your marriage dissolves, or I'll take it. If you want, I'll call DCF right now. But right now, the 2 of you are going to walk a very fine line. You're either going to exist in that house until you get this straightened out, or you're going to look at criminal charges, one or both of you, and I promise you, if I see that come into this court, I will be on the phone to DCF so fast, they'll be here before you get out the door.
The next month, in June of 2009, Annamarie secretly began seeing her ex, Carla Danielle, a Springfield police officer. By August, Anna had relocated from Cara's house and settled in with Carla in South Hadley. However, in November, having accumulated $10,000 in charges on Carla's credit card, Annamarie parted ways with her and returned to live with Cara. They both agreed to work on their relationship, putting their differences aside in order to raise Brianna in a 2-parent household. At this point, their combined credit card debt had now amounted to just over $100,000. But this did not stop them from going on an extravagant Caribbean cruise to commemorate this new beginning, while also renewing their wedding vows. However, the sunshine and sacred words of commitment did not prevent their relationship from quickly deteriorating once again. And as it seemed that they had given up on attempting to fix their finances, they quickly found a new topic to argue about: their friends Mike and Mark. On March 28, 2010, Annamarie was on duty for an overnight paramedic shift in Springfield. While she was away, Cara was visited by her friend Mike, who arrived with a 6-pack of Bud Light. Cara messaged Annamarie to let her know about the visit. Anna's reaction was intense, becoming extremely upset and seemingly jealous of the idea of Cara spending time with Mike. In her response, she texted, "It is becoming very clear how you feel about me. I don't like feeling this way. You are my wife. I hate the relationship that we have." Cara responded, "Okay, you being over the top and crazy for no reason, it's okay. He's my friend, period. Not doing anything wrong." Annamarie replied, "You are rude. I'm gonna leave. I don't give a shit. You are rude and disrespectful." Throughout their text-based yelling match, Annamarie decided to organize a visit with Mark for a few days later, when Cara was scheduled for an overnight shift. The heated text exchange continued all night, but eventually stopped at 8 a.m. when Annamarie completed her shift and headed home. Shortly after Anna returned home, Cara was called into her job at the Ludlow Fire Department. She drove to Ludlow, punched in, only to be sent home, pulling back into her driveway at 11 a.m. Cara then stayed at the house for about 4 hours. At 1:53 p.m., Mark messaged Annamarie, informing her that his sister had been diagnosed with cancer. Contrary to her usual behavior, she did not respond. Mark would later delete this text message. At around 3 p.m., Cara and Brianna left the house to complete some errands and let Annamarie rest while they were out. During the next several minutes, you will hear the most confabulated pieces of voicemail data associated with the murder of Annamarie Cochrane Rintala. These strange messages were left by Cara over the 4 hours that she and Brianna were supposedly out running errands. Many of those who are familiar with this case have linked these voice messages with the potentiality of Cara's involvement in Anna's death.
I mean, I know you're mad at Mike. Mike is, I love this him. I mean, he's like one of their closest friends, but there's no reason to still be mad when my gosh. Seems like we were getting along fine earlier. But anyway, that's advice. Love you. I love you, and we are still better. We love you. Oh my gosh, she's good. I know, I have to do it. And hey, listen, it's me, Hannah. Come on, you're trying to make a story. Like, what's up? You know, fine, get mad, but then, you at least text back or call back. Either way, well, remember we forgot to get stuff for your lunch tomorrow in school. So, yeah, we're going home, but no, it's not the wrong way. I mixed the chocolate shop, honey. And some crackers and cheese and crackers and, the chili and all this, maybe that's for something else. Goodbye, call us. Okay, bye-bye. Hey, and I'm starting to really freaking worried I'm not worried, but actually part of me just irritated. It's like, I know that you don't call when you get all upset, and I told you it's only Mike, my body can munch, okay? Anyway, I'm going to you, we're going to Burger King. We thought we would come out of the mall, and of course you're hungry, and it hurt me, so that was it. McDonald's, there's one McDonald's, no fun. The only thing that was that she answered, Burger King. Like, oh, good job, buddy. Are we Burger King? Call, please, please, please. Bye.
It is widely surmised that Cara left these voice messages on Annamarie's cell phone as a way to establish an alibi and as an attempt to nullify any evidence that the two were actively engaged in a volatile disagreement during the 16 hours prior to these moments. With the information that we have just presented, what happened next may come as no surprise. When Cara and Brianna returned from their errand run around 7 p.m., Cara would state that Annamarie was nowhere in sight. She then noticed that the basement light was left on, and when she went to check it out, she discovered Annamarie lying face down at the bottom of the stairs, lifeless, bloody, and broken. Apparently, Cara reacted quickly and scooped Brianna into her arms. She ran to their next-door neighbor Roy Dupuis, handed him Brianna, and shouted to him to call 911. Following up with Anna's in the basement, Roy promptly contacted the authorities.
What's your emergency?
Hi, my neighbor just came over. She was pretty distraught when she come over here with the baby. She told me to call 911. She said the other one was down in the basement, but she didn't say much.
Possible, maybe a domestic.
3 minutes later, police were on the scene. Upon entering the kitchen, they noticed that the basement door was left open. They then heard a woman shouting from downstairs. As they entered the basement, they discovered Cara holding Annamarie's body. Strangely, the body was covered in wet, pinkish-white paint. Officer Gary Poehler, who was familiar with Annamarie, initially struggled to identify her due to the severe swelling on her face. And after further examination, Anna's body was reported as cold and stiff upon discovery, as if she had been dead for several hours. The officers took Cara to the kitchen and asked her what happened, to which she replied, "We'd been arguing since yesterday. We should not leave each other mad," and proceeded to tell the officers about her day running errands with Brianna. Out of the blue, she then said, "I understand that I'm the #1 suspect." Lieutenant Robin Whitney arrived to lead the investigation with the support from an experienced detective named Jamie Magarian. As Detective Magarian continued to examine the crime scene, Lieutenant Whitney escorted Cara back to the Granby Police Station where she took part in an interview.
Alright, so let's back up a bit. You have a history of domestic violence, Anna, right? Okay.
Trying to take care of everything, and I'm tired, I guess, working overtime and trying to make ends meet and pay for all of us, and that was probably, that was another source of connection. And we used to push each other, we did, we'd argue and it would get physical, absolutely. No angel, but I can honestly say it was definitely back and forth, you know what I mean? The same problems were there. I felt, and again, they couldn't say about years. Or you want to talk bad about me, because I don't care about her. I love her. I don't want to talk bad about her because I'm bringing a lot of people out for me. Love her, and I don't want to talk bad. I feel like I'm betraying her. I feel like I'm betraying her by talking about that half stuff. And we agreed to feel together move on and start carrying that half behind us. I feel like this is the worst thing I could do for her to talk bad. I do.
like that, and so I get very anxious over it. You know what I mean? I don't like confrontation. I don't like the loudness. I don't like swearing. That's what she was kind of brought up around, so that's all she knows. It's not that she's that person, but that personality. And it eats at me, and I feel, like I can't even get out of the way. I felt bullied. I did. And that's a mean word. I felt bullied. My house was reality, and I felt bullied. I did. I felt little, and was always swearing at him, and all the swearing, it makes you feel really bad about yourself, and I feel like I just need to get away. I do. I need to get away. She walks right over you. And she kind of, she is, there's a part of her that's really hard. She is so charming, so thoughtful, what you want to do. I know she's tired. I didn't think it open, do you know? No. I know. Was the pain all over her back? I 4-year-old woman. No, I don't think so. I don't think so at all. It was looking, no. I don't know. I don't think so. So, again, so now we go back to the question is, would someone hurt her? I can't see that. I mean, I can't see that. I mean, she gets in arguments all the time with people. All the time. She is a very thick-headed person, she says what she means, what she feels, and some people take offense. What do you think? I want to say, if I had to guess, he said, she fell on the stairs, she took on the stupid shoe all the way down there. It actually even happened. We were talking about changing it this way. Constantly. But it really doesn't make any sense, though, if she fell down the stairs, that she would be where she is. I didn't know. Very patient for everything. When everything's going to ask you to do, I haven't had any support. It's just very hard. And it's starting to feel like I'm getting a finger pointed at me.
Many people believe that Cara's behavior in this interview was unusual. She went from complaining about Annamarie within the first 7 minutes to telling the detectives how horrible she feels talking negatively about her, and then going right back to more complaining. Following this interview, Whitney prepared to conduct a second interview. However, a call came in from David Hoos, a highly prominent criminal attorney in Western Massachusetts, stating that he was Cara's legal representative and advised against any further questioning. Law enforcement immediately complied. 4 days following Annamarie's death, Elizabeth Schiebel, the Northwestern District Attorney, made a public announcement stating that Annamarie had died from strangulation. The DA's office then confirmed this as a homicide case, the first one in Granby in 30 years. Throughout the investigation, details of Cara and Brianna's errand run on the day of the crime emerged due to a plethora of surveillance cameras along their route. Cara and Brianna left their home in Granby around 3 p.m. They then made a detour to Ludlow, a neighboring town, to visit llamas. They then proceeded to the Holyoke Mall and arrived shortly before 5 p.m. Surveillance footage showed Cara parking her Ford Explorer near the Target entrance. In this footage, a laundry basket and a red bag are visible in the back of the truck. During their mall visit, they went to the Children's Place and the Gap to buy t-shirts and socks. Around 30 minutes later, they left the mall and drove 2 miles to a McDonald's. Cara drove to the farthest part of the parking lot behind the restaurant. She then got out of the truck and threw some clothes into a plastic trash bin. They then left the premises without making any purchases. Investigators ended up finding this garbage bin and rummaged through it. Among the trash, a rag was found with blood on it. They continued to their next stop, a Stop and Shop. After getting groceries at the Stop and Shop, Cara drove 5.5 miles to a Burger King in Chicopee to get food for Brianna. The laundry basket and bag were still in the back of the truck at this time. Finally, they headed back home, another 5 miles. At some point between Burger King and the Rintala residence, the laundry basket and bag had vanished. Despite the high publicity of this case, over a year went by without any legal proceedings, nor were any substantial comments made by the DA's office. During this lull, Cara sold her Granby residence and relocated to Rhode Island with Brianna, where her mother and stepfather lived. In October of 2011, well over a year and a half following Annamarie's death, a grand jury indicted Cara on first-degree murder charges. She was arrested in Rhode Island and was taken back to Massachusetts to face these charges. Cara was ordered to be held without bail at the Women's Correctional Facility, and after 16 months of numerous pretrial motions and hearings, the trial began on February 20th, 2013.
Jurors heard opening arguments today in the state's first murder case ever involving a same-sex married couple.
22 News reporter Julie McDonald was in court to hear allegations of the couple's fights, financial troubles, and suspicions of infidelity.
This homicide did not occur out of the blue.
Prosecutor Stephen Gagne painted a picture Wednesday of a turbulent marriage between Cara Rintala and her wife, Annamarie Cochrane. The couple was drowning in $95,000 of credit card and auto loan debt. There were restraining orders, divorce filings, and multiple calls to Granby police during their 2.5-year marriage.
District Attorney Gagne explained to the jury that the relationship between Cara and Annamarie had been tumultuous. Moreover, there was also physical evidence to consider. Gagne highlighted the bloody cloth that was found in the garbage at the McDonald's, as well as the disappearance of the laundry basket and red bag from Cara's truck, which was never recovered. A medical examiner also provided their testimony, suggesting that Annamarie's death probably occurred between noon and 2 p.m. Cara claimed to have still been home with Brianna at this time. Considering these details, Gagne contended that Cara possessed the means, the motive, and the opportunity to end Annamarie's life. He said the result was Annamarie's body lying on a cold cement floor immersed in a pool of fresh paint mixed with her own blood, and that Cara ended the marriage once and for all with her own 2 hands. Defense attorney David Hoos, representing Cara, spoke to the jury, explaining that he did not know for sure who killed Annamarie, but neither did Gagne. He stated that although there were many things wrong with this case, he didn't need to prove anything, while Gagne, on the other hand, had to convince the jury of Cara's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, or as he called it, the last refuge of the innocent. Hoos acknowledged that Cara should have been under suspicion, but not exclusively. He argued that investigators should have also considered others, like Mark Oleksak and Carla Danielle. He contended that the investigators dismissed these possibilities due to a preconceived notion that Cara was the prime suspect in her wife's murder. As the trial proceeded, it became clear that the evidence Gagne possessed was not as divisive as he asserted during the bail hearing in 2011. For instance, he claimed that there would be multiple people from Cara's past relationships testifying about her abusive behaviors. Apparently, these leads did not pan out. Additionally, he had explained at the hearing that the paint on Annamarie's body was Glidden sealing paint, initially pink upon application, but transitioning to white within an hour. When first responders arrived, the paint was still pink, indicating recent application. However, the transformation of paint color from pink to white was not discussed at the trial, since the images taken at the crime scene in the poorly lit basement apparently weren't sufficient in depicting the pink hue. Regarding the rag discovered in the McDonald's trash can, initially believed to have Annamarie's blood, subsequent tests revealed highly degraded DNA, making it impossible to definitively determine whose blood was on it, or if it was even human. Gagne's primary witness was the medical examiner who performed the autopsy, Joanne Richmond. In cross-examination by Hoos, the medical examiner admitted that her initial autopsy report had indicated the time of death as unknown. In another cross-examination, a detective from the state police informed Hoos that Mark had provided false information during his initial 2 police interviews. Initially, Mark had said that he had been home on the afternoon that Annamarie was killed. In a second interview, he changed his story, disclosing that he, his wife, and his daughter had gone to a furniture store later in the afternoon. Additionally, it was only when confronted with receipts several months later that Mark admitted to visiting the bank, making a purchase of sweatpants at Walmart, and buying a bag of cat litter at a Big Y supermarket earlier that day. This was significant since very small traces of cat hair had been found on Annamarie's body, despite not having owned a cat for at least 9 months. During the questioning, Hoos also highlighted a peculiar peculiar circumstance that despite having a marriage and family of his own, Mark had been fixated on Annamarie, not only enough to lend her a credit card to pay for her phone bills, but to the extent that he brought her sleeping bag home and slept in it for several months after her death. The jury went to deliberation, and on the third day, there was a consensus that Cara was likely not innocent. However, 6 jurors believed that Gagne had failed to prove her guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. On March 13, 2013, at 3 p.m., after 6 days of deliberation, the jury informed the judge that they were deadlocked and that continued deliberations would not lead to a unanimous decision. Consequently, Rupp declared a mistrial, and the jurors were dismissed.
A Northampton jury has failed to come to a unanimous verdict in the state's first ever trial of a woman accused of killing her lawful wife. 22 News reporter Annamarie Rodriguez joins us live with the latest.
After 4 days of deliberations, Hampshire County Superior Court Judge Mary Lou Roop declared a mistrial in the Cara Rintala murder case. The jury's foreman told Judge Roop this afternoon that the jury was unable to come to a unanimous verdict. The jury said that further deliberations would not result in a verdict they would all agree to, forcing the judge to declare a mistrial. Cara Rintala was accused of killing her wife inside of their Granby home in 2010, and after the mistrial, First Assistant District Attorney Stephen Gagne told 22 News he couldn't understand why there was a hung jury.
We have no idea what the sticking point was or what any sort of divide may have been. It could have been 11-1, it could have been 6-6. Only the jurors know at this point.
Cara was not allowed bail following her first trial and would be held through her second trial as well. It began a year later in early 2014. The prosecution and defense still felt confident in their respective cases, and they didn't stray far from their original arguments. They hoped that by simply having a new jury, a just verdict would be reached. To everyone's astonishment, Cara's second trial resulted in another hung jury, and another mistrial was declared by Judge Rupp.
It just happened moments ago. First, we thought they were going to recess, but in fact, the jury had passed a note to the judge saying that they were deadlocked once again at 8-4, and because that's exactly where they were on Friday, they have not been able to budge from that in deliberations on Monday. And now here on Tuesday morning, they have declared a mistrial. So it's the second mistrial in the murder trial of Cara Rintala. She has been accused of murdering her wife, but the jury cannot come to a unanimous verdict.
Cara's defense team moved to have the indictment dismissed altogether because the evidence presented at her second trial was insufficient to warrant a conviction. However, Judge Rupp denied this motion. Cara's appeal to this decision was denied by the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court, essentially validating Judge Rupp's decision. Cara was going to be tried for a third time. The prosecution sticking to their guns didn't quite work in getting Cara convicted in the second trial, so they decided to change their tactic. They were allowed to bring a paint expert to give their testimony. During the trial, the expert testified that the paint should have dried within 30 minutes. This was a massive win for the prosecution. It solidified their timeline, proving that Cara was the only one who could have covered Annamarie's body in paint, attempting to manipulate the crime scene. It appeared to be the key to the jury settling on a verdict, because on October 7, 2016, Cara Rintala was found guilty in the first-degree murder of Annamarie Cochrane Rintala, and was later sentenced to life in prison. It seemed that Annamarie's family could finally put their minds at ease knowing that justice had been served.
A dramatic ending to Cara Rintala's third murder trial. The jury deliberated for 4 days and late this afternoon delivered a unanimous decision that Cara Rintala killed her wife in their Granby home in 2010 with malice aforethought and extreme atrocity.
Is she not guilty? Guilty of murder in the first degree, guilty of murder in the second degree, or guilty of voluntary manslaughter?
She's guilty of murder in the first degree.
Cara screamed out, "What about my daughter?" after receiving the verdict. However, this was not the dramatic ending that everybody thought it was, as 5 years later, on September 27, 2021, the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court overturned the conviction, ruling that Judge Rupp had erred by allowing the paint expert to give their testimony. It turns out that the experiments conducted by the paint expert were not only carried out on the wrong material, but also did not follow scientific method, which is a bare minimum standard for something being used in court as evidence. Cara was then released on a $50,000 bail, awaiting her new trial, and lived with her elderly parents and her now teenage daughter, Brianna, in Rhode Island. On September 13, 2023, for a fourth time, Cara was put in front of the jury to be tried for murder, more than 13 years after the death of her spouse. And for the fourth time as well, the state would be fighting for her conviction.
You will hear evidence that when the first responders arrived, they observed the body of Annamarie Rintala, they touched the body of Annamarie Rintala, they moved her arm, they moved her hips, they moved her body in order to release Cara from out underneath the body. They will testify in this trial that when they did so, her body was stiff as a board. Her body was completely one unit. Her arms were above her head. When they moved her body, it was completely locked in that position and moved as a single unit, stiff as a board. And the reason that will be important during the course of this trial is I expect you will hear evidence that, in the opinion of forensic pathologists and medical examiners, that her body was in well-developed rigor mortis, which is the stiffening of the body after death. And at the end of the trial, the evidence will prove to you that the defendant, Cara Lee Rintala, killed Annamarie, that she intended to kill Annamarie, and that she did so with deliberate premeditation and extreme atrocity or cruelty. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this whole investigation started with a lie. It started with a lie. When that 911 call was made, that Cara Rintala asked her neighbor, Roy Dupuy, to make, he said nothing about it being a domestic. But you know what the dispatcher did? The dispatcher called it in as a domestic. So before they even get to the crime scene, in their head is the idea, it must be Cara Rintala, because it's a domestic. The first responders hear that it's a domestic. The first police officers on scene hear that it's a domestic. And when Cara Rintala voluntarily agrees to speak to the police without a lawyer, 6 minutes and 55 seconds into that conversation, the question is asked of her, so I heard there's been a lot of domestic violence. That's why Cara Rintala is bringing up the domestic violence. Not because she wants to talk about a relationship with her and her wife. Because you'll hear evidence, I expect, that they reconciled. They want you to look at it with blinders on, exactly like the first responders did, exactly like the state police did, exactly like the dispatcher did when they said it was a domestic. They want you to just focus on that. They want you to believe that Cara Rintala is the only one in the whole world who had access to that house, and the only one in the whole world who could have done this. What they didn't tell you about is a guy by the name of Mark Olasak. You didn't hear one word about Mark Olasak. Mark Olasak was Cara Rintala's partner as an EMT and firefighter. Mark Olasak was in love with Annamarie. And how do we know that? We know that, ladies and gentlemen, because when they got around to interviewing him 18 months later, when he first lied, two days later they said, where were you? And he said, I went to physical therapy that morning, and then I was home the whole rest of the day. Total lie. Total and complete lie. That's not true. But because the police believed it was a domestic, great, all right, we'll check that person off. We don't have to worry about that person anymore. And then they find out that almost a year later, that Mark Olasak is still sleeping in a pink sleeping bag that Annamarie Rintala had at the fire station. And that at least on one occasion, Mark Olasak sent a text to Annamarie Rintala that he loved her. And he says he loved her in a friend way. That's what he did. But there's more than that. So when the police finally get around to interviewing him, and they find out about the kiss in the corner of the mouth, and they find out about the hugs and the money and the credit card debt of $7,000 and the I love you text, there's more in the sleeping bag. There's more than that. They also find out that he's the one who texts at 1:53. He's the one who texts Annamarie Rintala at 1:53. And does he tell the police that? No, he doesn't. Does he tell the police, hey, I tried to contact her that night. She never picked up. That's so odd because she always picks up. No, he doesn't. You know what he does instead, ladies and gentlemen? He deletes the text. He deletes the text at 1:53. And I expect the police will understand and know and learn that he deletes the text. And you know what they do about it? Nothing. And then when they find out that Annamarie Rintala was also having this relationship with Cara Rintala, they went to go talk to Cara Rintala. And Cara Rintala realized to them as well. She says she goes to her gym that day, and she goes for a run, about 2 hours, maybe 3. And in the middle of her run, which is the opposite direction of where Annamarie Rintala and Cara Rintala live, she tells them that she goes in this direction. They get her records, they get her bank records, and they find out that she makes a withdrawal over here, closer to where Cara Rintala and Annamarie Rintala live. And so what do? Do they go back and say, hey, wait a minute, you said you were going in this direction, and now you're going in this direction, according to your bank statements? Nope, didn't happen. And then they also find out she goes to a tanning appointment. And nobody questions whether or not when you're in the middle of a run, you would normally stop for a tanning appointment. Nobody questions that. And I expect you're going to see, as part of the crime scene, that there is tanning lotion on that basement floor. You'll hear that there was a struggle in the basement. You'll hear that somebody strangled Annamarie Rintala. You'll hear that somebody put their hands on her neck for 3 to 4 minutes. And that there's disarray in that cell. And not a scratch, not a cut, not a scratch, not a bruise on Cara Rintala. And ladies and gentlemen, if this is not a search for the truth, this is not an opportunity to give you all of the evidence that you need, so you can look at these witnesses and decide for yourself whether or not to believe them, then it is really a search for the truth at all? Because if it's not, what are we doing here? Cara Rintala did not kill her wife. And if this trial isn't a search for the truth, then why are we all here?
While some people following this case believed that the defense had a strong opening this time around, many seemed put off by the intense approach that they had trying to convince the jury. Defense attorney Rosemary Scapicchio was seen by viewers as abrasive and untrustworthy. It's unclear how this was perceived by the jury. The trial lasted 10 days, with the state calling 20 witnesses to the stand and the defense calling just 2. And after about 2 days of deliberations, 3 jurors were dismissed from service, leading Judge Flannery to add 2 alternates to the deliberating jury.
3 jurors in all were dismissed, 2 that were sitting on the case and 1 alternate juror. So now 2 additional alternate jurors have been tapped to consider the case. The judge addressed the courtroom Monday saying that the 3 individuals were dismissed for personal reasons and that he did not know their opinion of the case or if they had any opinion on the case.
Despite this hiccup, after about 16 hours, the jury had reached their verdict. Cara Rintala was found guilty of voluntary manslaughter.
What say you, Madam Foreperson? Has the jury agreed upon its verdict in Hampshire County Indictment 1180 CR 0128, the Commonwealth versus Cara Rintala? We have. If you could please give your verdict slips to the court officer. What say you, Madam Foreperson, as to count 1 of Hampshire County Indictment charging the defendant, Cara Rintala, with murder? Is she not guilty, guilty of murder in the 1st degree, guilty of murder in the 2nd degree, or guilty of voluntary manslaughter?
We, the jury, unanimously find the defendant guilty of voluntary manslaughter.
As you have just witnessed, Cara Rintala was found guilty of the lesser charge, voluntary manslaughter. Massachusetts state law dictates that a defendant convicted of voluntary manslaughter shall be punished by state prison for no more than 20 years. Cara Rintala's sentence hearing is scheduled for this Thursday, October 19th, 2023.